a Cinco de Mayo edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Sports Media channel. He is John McMullen. I am Jody McDonald. I can guarantee you the only thing in my coffee is a little cream and a little sweet and low. McMullen, you never know because he's got that metal container that he's drinking out of. There could be tequila in it. Let's find out if our guest has already started celebrating Cinco de Mayo, if he's just a coffee guy like yours truly. From NBC Sports Philadelphia, David Zangaro, good enough to jump aboard with us. Are you celebrating Cinco de Mayo yet, Zangaro?
I have my mug here. I won't tell you what's in it, but you can bet it's just
the
coffee.
Same way. That's why you do it. That's why you have the mug.
No one knows. There's a secret behind it, you know?
Yeah. Dave, we are smart. See, great minds think alike. Good to see you, Dave. I guess we got to start draft. Your first impressions of how the Eagles did. And obviously, some, once Devonta Smith, I think everybody's excited about getting the playmaker. And then, to me, Dave, too, is going to tell the tale of this draft moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am, too. I think the Devonta Smith pick is pretty good. And I think it felt like everyone was on board. The team, fans, reporters, I think everyone likes that idea. The second round pick is going to go a long way in determining the success or failure of this draft. It's because the player is exceptional. I mean, I haven't heard one bad thing about Landon Dickerson, the player or the person. The only thing you can say about him is that he's had injuries, and it's significant. I mean, we're talking about 2 ACLs, 2 ankles in 4 of his 5 years in college. It's a lot. And I'll be honest, I don't think I would have made that pick. I think it's too risky, but the Eagles know that the reward here could be huge. I mean, we're talking about this guy could be an all-pro for them for 6, 7, 8 years down the line. It's scary though, man. This is the team that drafted Sidney Jones, and I know that it's probably unfair to really compare those two, but it's too natural not to, right? I mean, this is a team that told us 5 years ago that, Sidney wouldn't be here at 43 if not for the Achilles injury, and that's why we're taking him, because we love the value. And that's a lot of the same things they're saying about Landon Dickerson. Now, I know the injuries are different. I know the position is different. The player is different. But just the fact that they felt like they got such great value in the second round for a player that was injured is scary. And, I mean, we're talking about the 37th pick. This is not like even a late second-round pick. This is a spot where you're talking about guys who a lot of us thought would go in the first round. So it's scary. And as far as the rest of the draft, I like the Milton Williams pick more than Tom Donahoe. I think it's a solid pick. I really like the player. I like the upside. And then the rest we'll see. I like the Kenny Gainwell pick in the 5th round. I thought that was good value. And then after that, who knows? I think Toi Pelotu, good value. I think there's probably a reason he was there in the 6th round, though. And then, the later round guys, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know a ton about Teron Jackson, but Jacoby Stevens is a guy at least we've seen a lot at LSU, and I like the idea of turning him into a linebacker.
Now I'm going to quibble with Dave Zangaro. I already did it with Johnny McMullen, so why shouldn't I do it with Dave too? You said everybody seemed to have liked the Devonta Smith pick. Oh, after the fact, yes. But there were a lot of opinions in this town that you can't take a 166-pound guy in the first round with that kind of he's not going to be able to play against NFL defensive backs. He's not going to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. And I've been a huge fan of his for 2 years. And give me the evidence that he can't do it. Other than you're not believing so, he's playing against SEC cornerbacks week in, week out, and all he ever did was win a Heisman Trophy. I would not say that everybody was on board with Devonta Smith prior to the draft. Once he became an Eagle, I think most of those critiques and or questions kind of dried up because people want to root for their Eagles. And once he puts on a green jersey, then you have to root for him. But I don't think everybody was on board with picking Devonta Smith before Howie Roseman decided to trade up and do just that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but also I don't want to completely discount the weight thing. I mean, there is a concern there, and it's a concern the Eagles thought about. It's not like they just thought, forget it, he's skinny, but who cares? I mean, they really looked into it, and they tried to figure out if he can translate to the NFL. It's a weird case because there's really not a comparison. I mean, we've had little guys in the league before, but different body builds and never this high of a pick. I mean, this is such a significant investment in a player. We're talking about the 10th overall pick. Even Marquise Brown a few years ago, it wasn't that significant of an investment. You look at Deshaun Jackson, he was a second-round pick, right? So, I mean, it's a lot to put into a player, but look, and maybe they're wrong. Maybe we're all wrong, and the weight will matter, but there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence going back to his time in Alabama where we all saw what he did, and he did it against great competition. And the thing I really like about him is that he's just so technically proficient that you feel more comfortable. Honestly, you kind of feel more comfortable with him than a guy who just won with his athleticism in college, because not to say he's not athletic, because he is in his own way, and he has great hands and great body control and all that stuff, and that's part of athleticism. But what I mean is, like, he's not a 6'4" monster who's just, kind of mossing people. He's not doing that. The way he won was running great routes, being technically proficient, and using his high football IQ. So all those things should translate. He's already ahead of his time in a lot of those areas, and now he's going to a coaching staff with a head coach that's a former wide receivers coach, a former wide receiver. So I really like the pick. And I'll be honest, he was not my top guy. When we talked about the choices that might be there, Patrick Surtain was my guy. I really thought that was the safest pick of the areas or the guys that would have had a chance to take. And I like the idea of a corner, but Devonta Smith is a really solid pick. I thought they couldn't go wrong with any of those four guys when we talk about Smith, Waddle, Surtain, or Horn, the four guys who kind of got talked about the most. And the more I've heard about Smith, honestly, since he's been drafted, the more I like him. You can't find a person who's been around the Alabama program in the last few years that has anything bad to say about him on or off the field. So sometimes I know it's that stuff gets overblown, the leadership aspect of it, but he's kind of an alpha. He reminds me a little bit of Jalen Hurts, just that kind of quiet confidence that he's not going to talk a lot in the locker room, but when he opens his mouth, the rest of the team's going to listen. And there's just something about him. It sounds kind of hokey to like call it that it factor, but I think there's something there. He acts like the man, and I think he's going to kind of bring that to the Eagles locker room.
All right, let me play devil's advocate here, Dave, because I'm one of those guys. I say 166 pounds. I would say Jody, and I have said the evidence is there aren't a lot of 166-pound guys that have had success in this league at wide receiver long term. You mentioned Deshaun Jackson. Obviously, he would be most notable. Deshaun Jackson's about speed. This guy's a well-rounded, well-crafted, as you mentioned, receiver. I asked Nick Sirianni. He plans to play him at X, Z, flex, everywhere. Great route runner, great yards after catch guy, plays like a 200-pounder. I think that hurts him. I think if you're 166 pounds and you're sticking your nose into the middle of the field, even in the modern NFL, where it's not like it once was, where, Ronnie Lott's taking up your head if you go over the middle. Zach Ertz always says, Dave, the injury rate in this league is 100%. 166 pounds going inside, that concerns me.
Yeah, I get it. The flip side of that is I know there's never been a player at 166 pounds that's maybe had the success the same way, but and we talked about this kind of leading into the draft. Like, there's never been a guy this light that's been selected this early. Well, there's also never been a guy this light who's been this good. I mean, there's no comparison, right? I mean, you look at what he did in college, and I know that you're drafting projection, not production, but there's never quite been a guy that what he just did in the SEC is amazing. And there's never been a guy to do that before. So I don't think it's even fair to compare him to other guys who are that light. And that's what, I get that that's what makes this a tougher pick in some ways, or you're the tougher evaluation for a player like this. But he's a tough guy. I mean, I understand that he's not built thickly. He's not, he's not a stout player, but he's played pretty tough. I mean, he's been injured before and he's played through it. There's the fear is going to be there, and it's going to be there until he plays. But I think there are enough things to like about him that, not that you overlook it, but you feel more comfortable with it, and it doesn't become the thing that takes him off your board or pushes him on your board, because he's done so many things at a certain level, and he does things that I think help him. I mean, he's so smart. He's not taking hits when he doesn't need to. He understands body control. He understands when to make a play, how to make a play, that I think all those things help him at 166 pounds. Now, does it help him when he comes across the middle and gets decked? Probably not, and we'll see what happens if he pops back up. But I get the fear there, but there's just no evidence to support the idea that it's going to hinder him.
Your point, Johnny, about Zach Ertz and the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. He's right. And that would have been the same with any player the Eagles drafted at 166 pounds and 320 pounds on the offensive or defensive line. He's part of that 100% who's going to get hurt too. So
Except for Jim Marshall and Brett Favre.
While I acknowledge that Zach is right, I'll also say thanks for covering the entire draft for us, Zach, with one statement. Speaking of Mr. Ertz, Mr. Zangaro, he's still here. Haven't we gone down the road of it's a mere matter of days before Zach Ertz becomes an ex-Eagle like 2 or 3 times this offseason? Yet he's still on the roster. Yet Howie Roseman talked about him after the draft, and he's still a quality player, and the Eagles are going to do what's best for the Philadelphia Eagles. Is there a chance that Zach Ertz is still here when training camp opens up? I'm not asking if he's going to show. I'm asking if he's still going to be on the roster.
Training camp, maybe. I have a hard time imagining he's going to be on the football team this year. I still think he's going to get traded or cut, and the cut happens well down the line if he can't get traded and he starts to really make a fuss. But what Howie said was basically, hey, this guy's still available. I don't like your offers yet. Come make me a better offer for this guy. And I understand he's playing this to try to maximize the value. But to me, it feels like the Carson Wentz situation all over again. It's that the player clearly isn't going to be here, and it's just about Howie trying to get back as much value as he can. It made sense that it might happen during the draft, right? I mean, when NFL GMs are talking, there's a greater chance that something goes down. And you thought maybe if they can get value and trade up somewhere and Ertz can become a part of a package, that all made sense. But now the possibility is there that, hey, maybe a team didn't get a tight end, or maybe, all the way in the training camp, someone gets hurt and they're opportunistic that way. But it's a tricky situation because I think we already understand that the relationship between player and organization has been fractured in some way. Even if it was just that he wanted the contract, he didn't get a contract, even if it was just that, not that you want to bend to the player and really care about what the player wants, because you want to maximize the value. You want to get as much back for him as you can, but we're talking about an all-time great player in the franchise, and I don't think you want to screw it up to the point where he doesn't want to come back here at some point and go on the Wall of Fame or whatever it is. I think you want to somehow do what's best for him at a certain point, but you don't sacrifice that in favor of not getting value. So it's a tricky situation to be in. I still think he's going to be traded at some point.
The great Dave Zangaro, I'm going to say that out loud to Dave. Read him at NBC Sports Philadelphia. Nobody does a better job covering the Eagles than Dave. You alluded to Tom Donahoe, so I do want to get into that a little bit. I think it was overrated. I think it was overblown. I think it was a little dust up. The fact that evidently nobody knew the camera was there, Tom didn't know, or at least he claimed to Chris Mortensen he didn't know, surprises me a little bit. But bottom line, we're arguing about a couple defensive tackles in the 3rd round in a historically weak defensive tackle draft. And I'm with you, Dave. I think Howie got it right. I'd rather have Williams than the 2-down player McNeil. Should we make more of it? Is this a bigger deal because of the Eagles' history?
It looks like a bigger deal, right? I mean, that was the thing. It's a really bad look right now for this team where there was so much talk about the importance of getting everyone on the same page and kind of moving past some of the dysfunction that we know existed, right? I mean, we know that last year, how he went rogue a little bit, and it ticked people off. So for that to happen and for us to be talking about that so much, and then, day 2 in the draft Friday night, we're all watching it like, you got to be kidding me. I think it's more of a bad look, and it's unfortunate for them that it played out on national television. I'm kind of with you. I think I don't want to overblow it because this stuff happens. It does. And Tom Donahoe, anyone who's met Tom Donahoe knows that he's not one to bite his tongue when he has an opinion. I mean, he's been doing this too long. He's been a GM twice. If he has an opinion, he's going to let them know. And I think the Eagles appreciate that. They appreciate having that honesty. He's not a yes man. They have plenty of yes men. He's a guy who, if they fired him tomorrow, he'd go back to Pittsburgh and live a happy life, and he'd be fine with it. But he's not going to cater to anyone in that organization. And I think that they appreciate that. And I think that's what we saw there, that he liked one player more than they liked the other player. And he let them know it. And it's funny, the Eagles put out that video of Jonathan Gannon. That matters. Yeah. As funny as it was that they did it, the fact that the defensive coordinator was that excited about the pick, to me, matters more than the senior football advisor, as much sway as he has in the building. I'd rather the defensive coordinator be on board with the pick than Tom Donahoe.
I'll give you my opinion. I'm with Donahoe on this. I think, as a matter of fact, McNeil's going to be the better player. But that's something we'll figure out over the next 5 years. Shame on him. He's got to know that the camera's there. He can't claim after the fact that, Mort, I didn't even know the camera was there. That's your job. You're supposed to know that the camera's there, and you can't have the reaction that you have. But I will give him credit. He did good damage control afterwards. Best draft that they've had in the last 10 years. So Donahoe got my attention plenty over the weekend, which I'm not sure that the Eagles needed or anybody needed at this point. You mentioned Gannon, the new coordinator, and yes, the very directed video that the Eagles released to show how psyched he was with the pick. What did we learn about him without ever having seen him and or his defense on the field? Can we pick up any pointers on maybe what kind of schemes they're going to run, what kind of usage they're going to have for players, how they're going to do it differently than the Schwartz defense did off just the players that they've acquired since the draft came down, Dave?
Yeah, a little bit. Now, it was funny. The one guy who I really looked at it with a raised eyebrow was Patrick Johnson, because they listed him as a linebacker. He was an edge player in college. And so you're like, all right, they call him a linebacker. He's probably a stand-up rusher. Are we going to see some odd fronts? That was the first thing I thought. And I don't know. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself for a 7th-round pick. But that was kind of one of the, that might not mean anything. They just probably like the player.
But Jannard Avery as well, Dave. They moved him to linebacker.
Exactly. So, and you heard Jannard Avery's at linebacker, and you're like, well, he's not playing the mic. I mean, he's not that agile. So you're like, all right, Patrick Johnson's a linebacker. He's probably a stand-up rusher. Jannard Avery, is this a position in Gannon's defense? Are we going to see some different fronts this year? I think there's a possibility of that. And it's funny because we've looked so much at Minnesota, and I think we should. I generally think that the fact that he kind of started there and he has that Zimmer background, and then they bring in Nick Rawlis, the linebackers coach from Minnesota. It points to a lot of the Zimmer defense. And then you look at Zimmer, you look at Eberflus, and you try to figure out what Gannon is going to do. But Gannon's a pretty smart guy. He's pretty highly regarded around the league. I'm sure he has wrinkles that we're not anticipating. You know what I mean? He's waited a long time for this. So to think that he's just going to bring Zimmer's defense and here's Zimmer's defense, I don't think that's the case. I'm really curious to see what he's going to do, and I'm hoping at some point we get to ask him about it. It's kind of strange that we haven't talked to the defensive coordinator yet. He got hired a few months ago.
Or the offensive coordinator, but that's not as important. But okay, you're right about that. Now, when you were running down sort of your day 3, you mentioned a lot of names. One of the names you didn't mention was Zach McPherson, the cornerback, and the Eagles didn't get help. At pretty obvious if you look at the depth chart right now. The one glaring weakness is outside corner. I wouldn't say there's plenty of other weaknesses as well, but that's one. If you had to go play today, you're like, oh, what the heck are we going to do at this particular position? Now, Howie made a big deal about going back to Ronald Darby. There's still other options, but what the heck are they going to do with that position, Dave?
Yeah, I think that was a hint. I really don't think they're done there. And I don't know if it comes through free agency or a trade. I don't think they can go into a season with what they have. And I know that this season look, they're not going to win anything in 21, but they have to try to be competitive. I don't know if they can do that right now. I don't know enough about Zach McPherson to think that he can step in and be a starter. And that leaves Slay and Avonte Maddox and Craig James as your top corners right now. That's not good enough to me. And that's nothing against Avonte, who I think was obviously playing out of position last year. He's played 3 positions in the NFL. Outside corner, I'd put firmly at the third best spot for him. I'd put safety and nickel ahead of that. So ideally, you'd like to get, if Avonte is going to be here, you'd like to put him at the nickel spot and find someone to play outside. Can Zach McPherson be that as a 4th-round pick? I'm skeptical of that, and that's not a knock against the player, but a 4th-round corner is far from a sure thing. So I don't think they're done there, and I don't think they should be done there.
You mentioned trade as a possibility, Dave, which is interesting. I would think that it'd be that much more difficult to make a trade because player-for-player trades in the NFL are so infrequent. It's oftentimes a waste of time to try and find a team that you match up with. It's usually for draft picks. And now you got to wait 360 some odd days to be able to cash in that draft pick. Are there actually cornerbacks out there that you would say would be an upgrade for the Eagles that could be available in exchange for a draft pick you're not going to be able to cash for another 12 months now? I got to believe if Howie's got something like that working, he's doing a good job keeping it under wraps because I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to try to fake some names here because I don't know who it would be, but anyone they trade for is an upgrade. Look at their depth chart. I mean, it's not like it's a pretty low bar to clear, and that's not a knock on these players. But, I mean, right now you're going into a season. We'll take Zach McPherson out because I don't exactly know how he fits, how far along he'll be. You're talking about Darius Slay outside. I'd probably put Craig James at the other corner position, Avonte as the nickel. He'd probably start outside, moving the nickel on sub packages. So after that, you have Michael Jacquet, Kevon Seymour, Jamison Houston. It's a pretty quick drop off.
It's impressive that you came up with those names.
Lavert Hill. They were getting deep. They've got to do something. I just can't imagine. It's almost impossible to go into a season with that. And maybe Zach McPherson. And the problem is we don't have OTAs either. It's not even like this guy can show up to OTAs and wow everyone in shorts. He can't do that. So the first time we're really going to see him in competitive action is in August. Yeah. It's not good enough.
It certainly is. And it brings me to how we was on with Angelo yesterday. Jody made a big deal about him saying, hey, we're going to compete. We're going to try to win games, essentially. I think everybody looks at this team and says, Jeffrey Lurie used the term transitional phase. Can they be better than expected? Can this team in a bad division compete for an NFC East title? They're not going to be in the mix for a significant Super Bowl contender. I think we all realize that. But in a bad division, can they compete?
I mean, if the division is as bad as it was last year, sure. If it's the historically worst division in NFL history again, yeah. I mean, they better be around the conversation.
Well, they didn't last year.
They were in the
race
till week
15. 4 wins. I mean, long time.
Yeah. I mean, they were in the race. Yeah. Look, I think there's talent on offense. It's unproven talent, and a lot of it hinges on Jalen Hurts. If that line should be better, and that's a big deal. I don't want to overlook that. That line was a train wreck last year because of the injuries, and there's no guarantee it is better because the injuries are scary. You have a 33-year-old Jason Kelce, a right guard coming off an Achilles, a right tackle who's dealing with the same ankle injury he's dealt with for 3 years, left tackle who's a year into football, or a left tackle who's been a major disappointment in the NFL, and a left guard who's solid. So, and then your best backup is a guy who's also coming off an ACL, by the way, he just drafted. So if that line can be better, I think Jalen Hurts has a shot to be a decent player. He's kind of a wild card, though. I don't know what he's going to be. The Eagles don't know what he's going to be.
No.
So much of the success, at least offensively, hinges on Jalen Hurts. They'll have some more weapons now. We'll have Devonta Smith. I think Jalen Reagor has a better shot this year, obviously. Removed from his rookie year, all the pressure, the injuries. We'll have a new coach and coordinator to scheme him up a little better. So I think they have some talent offensively. Defensively, the well's running a little dry, guys. You know, they're getting older. They have Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, their two best players, both over 30. They have some talent. They have Javon Hargrave, who I think is a really good player, but now he has to learn a new scheme.
Yeah.
Linebackers, Eric Wilson, I think was a decent signing. And then in the secondary, Rodney McLeod's coming off that injury, and we know the situation at corner. So I don't think they're going to be a good team. I don't think they're going to be some kind of real contender. Can they stick around in the NFC East? Yeah, probably.
Dave, let me go here. You just ran down, gave a nice little capsule of the sides of the ball and where the Eagles are sitting these days. Since the season ended, they've decided that they weren't going to draft a quarterback. They had a chance to draft a quarterback 7 rounds. They didn't draft one. Their first pick, they brought in Jalen Hurts, his former teammate, Heisman Trophy winner, but brought in his former teammate. Second round, they took an offensive lineman. Third round, they finally got to the defensive side of the ball. Off-season acquisitions, they haven't blown anybody away with adding specific pieces on either side of the ball. They've kind of gone out of their way to say, and let me not forget, they could have drafted Justin Fields. They chose not to with the pick that they had. They really have gone down the Jeffrey Lurie proclaimed through Chris Mortensen road. Our job is to get better around Jalen Hurts. Is this an overcompensation for what happened with Carson Wentz? Because Carson supposedly couldn't mentally handle the fact that they took Jalen Hurts in the second round, that this year they're overdoing it to make sure Jalen Hurts, despite the fact that he's a completely different personality than Carson Wentz, doesn't feel threatened at all, that we're bending over backwards to make it easier for Jalen Hurts.
I don't think so. I think that the makeup is much different when you're talking about Jalen Hurts versus Carson. I think if they drafted Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts would try to beat him out. And he might have a shot. Who knows? I don't think he'd have a shot, but I think they realized that we have to figure out if Jalen Hurts is the guy or not. And there's some real skepticism everywhere about that. Even inside the building, there's some real skepticism about whether or not he can be that guy. So I think they look at it and say, well, we got to find out. And the only fair way to find out is to get pieces, put them around him. And even if he's not the guy, we have the pieces still. We still have the pieces that we surrounded him with to try to find out. So we all know how much flexibility they have next year, how much ammo they're going to have to get a quarterback next year if they find out that Jalen Hurts isn't the guy. And I like the idea of giving him a year to see if he can improve, to see if he could be the long-term starter. Scenario is he's okay this season. He's just okay. And okay is probably not going to be good enough, honestly. If they're not sold on him now as an organization completely, I think he's going to need to be pretty good this year for them to not find a quarterback next year. That we know how much this organization values quarterback. This is a league that values quarterback, and this is an organization that, really values it. And we can make fun of the quarterback factory thing because it was a silly line to say, but it exhibits how much they care about it. So I think they're going to give him this year. I think that's why they're doing this, to find out, say, hey, Jalen Hurts, this is your team for this year. And you try to do everything you can to prove to us that you're the guy. But if he's not, they have options, and they won't hesitate to use them, I don't think.
All right, Dave, last one from me. Thanks for hopping on. Read Dave at NBC Sports Philadelphia, but you piqued my interest there for one reason. I think that you're right, and it's contradictory, because this team, obviously, quarterback factory, Howie regrets that, but that's what they believe. They believe in that position. They believe they understand how important it is. So why in what everyone calls, basically everyone called a historic quarterback draft, are you kicking the can down the road? And you had the opportunity, it was sitting there for you at number 10 overall. You got a plan. I understand it. You want Devonta Smith, but Justin Fields is there. Probably a month and a half, 6 weeks ago, you said there's no way he's going to be there. He's there. And you're kicking the can back to next season. And when you said they're probably not going to believe in him in 12 months. I mean, I don't know how much you can learn. There's going to be excuses. It's not a great football team. They're not in a position. And then in theory, everybody we all know builds up the board. There's going to be players that rise in NFL talent evaluators' minds at the quarterback position. But man, this group was good. And you were in a position to seize the moment. Why didn't they?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And I do want to point out that they like Jalen Hurts. They wouldn't have drafted Jalen Hurts. They didn't like him. They do like him. And I think there's a reason that Howie brought up Russell Wilson last year. And it's not to say that he's Russell Wilson. I'm not making it clear. I'm not saying that. But they liked him, and they didn't want to lose him. That's why they took him at 53, as misguided as that might have been. So I don't think it's like they're completely down on Jalen Hurts. They don't think he can be the guy. I think there's a chance of it. But I also think that, we're looking at this it's a deep quarterback draft, right? But it doesn't mean they like every quarterback in this draft equally. And I think that once they traded down from 6 to 12, you understood that they weren't going to be, if they were interested in a quarterback, they knew that quarterback was not going to be there. So that part of it lines up, right? We heard some whispers that Wilson was a guy they had their eye on, and pretty clearly they weren't going to have a shot to get him. So whether or not that evaluation is right or wrong, and whether or not they were wrong about Justin Fields or Trey Lance, I don't know. But I think it was pretty clear that they were maybe not in love with those other quarterbacks the same way. And I think they also had to ask themselves, what's the separation between Hurts and these guys? I think it's pretty significant. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't think it's as significant to kind of blow up that second-round pick. And I think some of it is that, hey, we just used a second-round pick on this guy. We were willing to torpedo our organization to do so. Are we really going to just abandon it a year in? I think that probably plays a role too.
All right, Dave, last one from me, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. Might be one of your least favorite things in the world. Most people it is. The sports hypothetical question. And I acknowledge ahead of time that this is highly unlikely, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Howie Roseman gets a call. It's the general manager of the Packers who says, listen, we've been meeting with Rodgers. He just doesn't want to be here. I said, all right, we'll try and accommodate. Tell me the teams that you'll accept a trade to, and you'll show up for the first day of camp to get that $500,000 workout bonus. Then you'll be good to go if you go there. And knowing full well what I want in return, the only fit is the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, he signed off on Philadelphia, and I need 3 first-round draft picks, and they got to be right away, not down the road. And you guaranteed to have 2. Oh, did we lose Dave? There he is. He's still there. We're guaranteed to have 2, and we'll take that Carson Wentz deal too. Whether it comes back a 2 or a 1, you give us your pick, Miami's pick, and Carson's pick. You got yourself Aaron Rodgers, and here's his agent's number in case you need to confirm and don't buy the fact that it'll go to Philadelphia. That's why we call this a hypothetical. If it happens, what does Howie Roseman do?
I'll be honest, Jody, missed that whole question. My internet was
that was a big one.
It was a long one.
It was great. I
lost internet, got it back. You were still going.
I'll give you the edited version. Packers GM calls Howie Roseman. Aaron Rodgers signs off on coming to Philadelphia. Eagles have what it takes to get him their 2 1s plus the Carson Wentz one. Gutekunst said, that's enough for me. I'll pull the trigger on a deal. Call Aaron. He's good with coming to Philadelphia. Those things in place, highly unlikely as they may be, but if they're all in place, what does Howie Roseman do?
It's a good question. The problem is they need so much. They really do. And all those picks that you're trading to get Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have a team with Aaron Rodgers. Here he is. I still think they'd entertain it. We're talking about one of the best, maybe the best quarterback in the league, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He still has plenty of good years left. I think Howie would entertain it. I don't know if you'd have a team with Aaron Rodgers and then Aaron Rodgers. That'd be the
And
scary
Devonta
part.
Smith, who's not going to get hurt at 166 pounds.
By the way,
Yeah.
Dave, that'll get you 10 wins. Aaron Rodgers. And
That's the
Devonta
thing,
Smith.
and that's why it's tempting. It's like
Yeah.
he's that good. I think Howie would at least entertain it. He'd probably do it.
And it would give us great fodder for months and months, probably years to come. And Dave
Not going to happen.
No.
Dave Zangaro, I said hypothetical. Playing to that 2%. I love doing it. Dave, we appreciate you coming on board. Great stuff. We will certainly be tapping into you again down the road. Thanks for coming on with us today. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks,
Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly. Read him at NBCSportsPhilly.com. All right, the Mac and Mac guys coming back. We've still got an hour left to play here on a Cinco de Mayo edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.